today we're going to transfer this simple formula of turning Celsius into Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit into Celsius. And we're going to take this formula and we're going to be able to actually use it in Python. So let's make this function and let's call it convert. And we'll take in either Celsius or Fahrenheit, so the input, and then it'll just give out an output, right? So first I'm going to pass this because we don't need to do anything in it yet. And we just need to actually call it with a input function. So let's get the player input. So the player equals input Celsius or Fahrenheit. And now we can get player equals input, and we can say input. So this will just say how hot it is, and this will say if it's starting in Celsius or Fahrenheit. So let's just say that system, and let's say heat. So our system needs to be taken in here, and our heat needs to be taken in here into the convert. So our system can go in first, and then our heat can go in second. So this input here will either be system, sys, or heat, heat. Perfect. So now, if system is equal to C, that means that the player wants it to be Celsius, right? Or if system is equal to F, that means that the player wants it to be in Fahrenheit. So let's make these two different systems. Celsius is pretty easy. We have this formula right here. So let's just paste this here, and the heat will be the output. So output equals that. This is going to be in Fahrenheit. If it says Fahrenheit, then we'll put in our heat here, minus 32 over 18. So our output's pretty obvious here. Now for our Celsius, we just need to do the opposite. So we just add 32. We put that in parentheses, and we multiply it by 1.8. And that will be equal our output. And we don't want to use output inside of here. We actually want to use heat here. And let's say our output is equal to that. Perfect. And now we say our output equals 0 because we want to be able to know that no matter what happens, we have an output here, and then we'll return it. So if the player were to say, put in an E or something, then it's not going to like throw an error. It's just going to say 0. But maybe we do want to throw an error. Maybe we want it to say something is wrong when something is in fact wrong. So let's actually use a while loop. A while loop basically just does whatever it's doing until something has happened. So for example, while true means it's just going to go forever. And then whenever we hit one of this or one of this, then it's going to stop. We can use break to say we're getting out of this while loop now. So break here and break there. Awesome. So whenever we hit an output for the Celsius or an output for the Fahrenheit, then it'll work perfectly. But if it doesn't, right, and it goes on through that, then we say print please input correct. Perfect. And maybe the player put in a Celsius or a Fahrenheit, but they also in here, they put in, let's say like the letter A. That's not going to work at all. The reason why is because in this heat, we actually have to transfer this into an integer, which is a number, right? In order to be able to do math on it. And if that happens and it's saying A in here, it's going to throw an error. And we don't really want to do that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to say try all of this. Boom. We're just trying it. If it works, then that's perfect. And I'll put this return output here as well. But if we have an error and something goes wrong, then we say except. Perfect. So if everything goes right, it'll do this. And if something goes wrong, we want it to have an except. And that except will be print error. Please try again. Perfect. So something went wrong. We need to try again. So in going back and just looking at what we did here, we've got our first input, and it's basically asking the player, do you want it in Celsius or in Fahrenheit? That's all it is. And our heat is just saying, what heat are you putting in here? Let's put colons here just to be very clear that the player needs to put something in here. Then we actually do the conversion. We put in our system to the first one, and put our heat into the second one. So all the way back up here, we have our system and we have our heat. We try to loop forever, saying our output is equal to nothing. And if the system is equal to C, which means we're doing a Celsius, then we're going to output our conversion, which is the correct conversion according to this. Then we're going to leave this, and we're going to get out of the while loop, and we're going to return our output. Otherwise, if it's Fahrenheit, we'll do the same thing but with a different thing. And otherwise, we'll say, please input the correct system. Now, one thing we want to do here to make sure that that's actually going to work is we need to say system is equal to input Celsius or Fahrenheit. So now we'll be able to actually get the user to input it over and over again, rather than if we just did this, if the player put in an E, then it would just go forever saying please input correct system over and over again, and that would be bad. Now, if all of that doesn't work, something goes really wrong, then we have an exception. And it just says print error, please try again. And in that case, it'll just exit out of the whole program and return absolutely nothing. So let's just call convert again. We'll just say convert. And we actually want to do all of this just right here. So we're basically just redoing this, and we don't usually want to have double standards, like we don't want to say the same thing twice. So let's actually make a new function, and let's call this function get underscore inputs. And we don't have to do anything inside of the brackets, but just have a colon, and just put all of this in there. Perfect. And now we can call this get inputs here and there. Perfect. So now we have a fairly clean system for checking if the Celsius and Fahrenheit conversions will work or not. Press F5, and it's going to say Celsius or Fahrenheit. And I'll say Celsius, and then input degrees, I'll say 10 degrees. And that's it. We probably want it to actually say what we're getting back. And since get inputs has this convert in here, what if we just say print convert system to heat? So we're going to print whatever it returns. In most cases, that should be either 0 or whatever the player puts in. So F5, we've got Celsius 10, and now it says 75.6000001. Well, that's not very useful. It's kind of way too long. So what if we just want to have 75.6? We just want to have one decimal point. Well, it's actually pretty easy. Since Python has a round function, what we can do is we can say, whenever there's a return, here we return the output, we just say round it. So we're going to round our output. And we actually want to multiply this by 10. Because now if it's like 10.333, it's actually going to round 103.33, which basically just gives us 103. And then we can divide it by 10 afterwards, right? And that will be 10.3. So instead of 10.33333, it'll just be 10.3, which is exactly what we want. So I'll say divided by 10 after the round, right? And now if we press F5, we say Celsius, we say 10, we have 75.6, and that's exactly what we want. Oh, I got this formula a little bit wrong. We just got to say integer of heat times 1.8, and then that plus 32. And now if we say Celsius 10, then it'll say 50.0. That's exactly what we want, because that is what Google says, 10 to 50. If you want to get this code, you can get it in the description, but I'd encourage you to write it out and just follow the tutorial. Thanks for watching.